Привет всем! And welcome to the episode where we look at the second novella in Leonid Gaidai's famous slapstick comedy, Operatsiya Y. Here is the link to the first episode in case you missed it, in which I talk a little bit about the director's background and the history behind the film's creation. You might want to watch it first or come back to it later, it doesn't really matter. All three stories are completely autonomous. Their protagonists are nerdy student Shurik, being the only unifying element. In this novella called Наваждение, aka Deja Vu, Enchantment or Obsession, Shurik is cramming for an exam and, having entered a trance-like state, doesn't notice a girl who studies alongside him. After successfully passing an exam, spoiler alert, he snaps out of it and is now enchanted by the same girl without either of them realizing that they have already met. In this episode, we'll also cover such titillating themes as academic dishonesty and nudity in Soviet cinema. Are you on board? Then like for luck. I am Katya, and this is Soviet Movies Explained. It's the end of summer semester, and Shurik, who is now established to be a student at a Polytech college, has exams in some complex physics. In the previous novella, we have seen how he'd spend his days, working part-time at the construction site and re-educating boors instead of attending lectures, so now he runs around in panic and in search of lecture notes. The exam week, sessia, at the end of each semester, always was and is the time of tremendous stress. I experienced this firsthand, having graduated in 2007, when the education system was nearly identical to the Soviet one. I studied architecture and civil engineering, by the way. Thanks for asking. What am I doing then reviewing movies? Thanks for not asking, and let's get back to the subject. The session stress is reflected in this ancient piece of student folklore. От сессии до сессии живут студенты весело. From session to session, the student's life is merry. During the semester, not much was asked from the students' attendance at most, but then the finals came, always unexpectedly. And all the course papers and projects and lab results were due, with 3 to 5 exams on top. Few students had enough diligence and time management skills to pace themselves, and even then it was nearly impossible to learn everything, while most, me included, slacked off for the most of the year and then made a mad dash in the last remaining weeks or even days. That's why passing the exam was not only a test of your knowledge, but also adaptability, presentation, negotiation, and dramatic skills, as well as luck. It was considered extremely cool to enter the exam room after declaring to your peers that you haven't prepared at all, to exit it later with an excellent grade. Everyone would think that you're either a genius and/or a lucky bastard. That's why the image of the student who sees the lecture notes for the first time only 3 hours prior to passing the exam with flying colors was very dear to every student's heart.
Давай.
Халявы не будет!
But I'm getting ahead of myself and spoilering, yet again, the suspense. Please tell me, what is the attitude to the learning process and the exams in your country, while I revert back to the moment where, failing to obtain the lecture notes, Shurik resigns to drawing the needed knowledge from the source, that is an enormous library book. But then he accidentally sees the sought-after notes in the hands of 2 girls and becomes engrossed with reading them from behind their shoulders and oblivious to his surroundings. So when one of the girls gets off the tram, he follows her glued to her notebook while she, equally transfixed, thinks that it's still her friend. While said friend is carried away, never to be seen in the movie again. I used to really worry about her missing the exam and facing repercussions, but while researching for this video, I found out that initially there were more episodes with her planned. But the actress got pregnant during the film shooting and decided to put her career on hold. In fact, there is a 4-month gap between this scene
Осторожней, гражданин, не отвлекайся.
and this one. And the latter is set in a way that would conceal her pregnant belly. Returning back to our main character and the girl, they go to her flat, share a meal and even bed, never breaking their cramming trance. Their preoccupied state in its aftermath allow for numerous situational gags, most prominent of which are them ignoring an aggressive dog and simply walking past it, leaving him completely perplexed and shrugging shoulders. Dogs don't shrug shoulders, of course, so in this exact moment, Gaidai is actually lying prostrate in front of the dog and lifts his front paws at the right moment. Props to the director's dedication and the dog's patience. The famous bed scene is of course very chaste. The heroes strip to their underwear under the pretext of it being too hot and recline side by side on the couch, still fully immersed in reading. To me, it always seemed a little bit awkward and forced, and in my opinion was put in not to coax embarrassed giggles from the immature audience, but to annoy the art council and probe the boundaries of censorship. Remember? And that meant absolute ban on showing any sexual interactions except hugging and kissing. And nudity, which included revealing underwear. That's why Gaidai, who always liked his actresses to show a little bit of skin, bypassed this regulation by making them wear bathing suits. And bikinis are just clothes, aren't they? When you hear the word exam, you probably imagine some multiple choice test. But that was not how exams were typically administered in Soviet Union. Instead, they usually combined written tasks with oral presentation and went like this. Roughly 2 weeks before the exam, the students received a list of questions. Sometimes they were already grouped into bilety, tickets. Usually a ticket consisted of several from 3 to 5 questions.
Билет номер 7. Первый вопрос.
First 1 or 2 could be theoretical, a definition or a list of properties or some concept and so on.
Отвечаю на первый вопрос 7-го билета. В основу работы синхрофазотрона.
Followed by more practical tasks to solve a problem or prove a theorem.
Билет номер 9, а при нем задача.
There were usually 20 to 30 tickets, all numbered and unique. If there were more students and tickets on a given day, then they won't be put back into the pile. But sometimes they were, and in that case, the students went out of their way to mark them somehow, fold or tear, to help those who would come after them. Students would enter the room one by one, present their zachotka, a special card that holds records of all their grades, and then randomly, or looking out for crimps, choose a ticket. Then you would have some time to prepare, write down your answers or solutions, after which you would be called up to the professor to present your answer. Is it much different in your country? I'm really curious to know.
Профессор, можно еще? Пожалуйста.
In this situation, the guy immediately asks for another ticket. This was sometimes allowed as a second attempt in case you knew nothing from the first ticket, for example. But the procedure would reduce your grade by 1. And since in Russia there is a 5-point grading scale, which effectively has only 4 points, 5 being excellent, 4 good, 3 pass, and 2 fail. After picking the third paper, the guy, who clearly spent all his free time playing blackjack, runs out of mana and is offered to retake the exam some other time. By the way, the actor who played the hapless student was initially cast as Shurik.
Перебор.
The next examinee invents a hands-free radio transmitter.
Костя, как слышимость? Как слышно? Как меня слышишь? Прием.
And serves as a harbinger of how today's students use high-tech to cheat. But in that analog era, he has to conceal his bulky equipment under the ridiculously festive attire, which mocks the elegant look and clever gadgets of James Bond. The professor must be used to such tricks and has a jamming device at hand. The guy fails the exam, but gets an excellent mark for the invention. Curiously enough, the character's nickname is Dub, which means oak, and is sometimes used as a humorous way to call someone stupid. Dub dubom means dumb as a rock. Since I've mentioned cheating, I should comment that, as far as I understand, the attitude towards academic dishonesty in Soviet Union was far less stringent. Officially, of course, zero tolerance was proclaimed, but the worst thing that would happen if a student got caught was that he'd be forced to retake the exam. Among the students, cheating was a normal, if not a noble thing. It was commonly acknowledged, sometimes even by professors, that it was nearly impossible to know it all, and, what's more important, to make knowledge stick. A good engineer is not the one who knows everything, but the one who knows where to look it up. Every one of my fellow classmates and students, me included, cheated at some point. Making cheat sheets for an exam helped you memorize and structure your knowledge, as well as gave you an additional sense of security, even if you never managed to use them. Inventing and utilizing some devious way to hide your cheat sheets would only increase your prestige among your peers. We actually never see Shurik's exam. We meet him when it's already over, and he reports getting an excellent grade. And now that he can finally appreciate his surroundings, he notices a charming girl that he has never seen before. They get introduced, and something funny happens.
Петя.
Well, at first the nervous Shurik gives a completely random name, but then corrects himself.
Саша.
What? Who the hell is Sasha? Well, it's time to mention that most of us Russian speakers don't use our real names. In all my official documents, my name is Yekaterina. And though I'm very fond of this name, it's reserved for official and business purposes only. Since my early childhood, I was called by its diminutive form, Katya, and everyone I know also has one. These diminutive forms and their origins are common knowledge among native speakers, and everyone can safely extrapolate that a boy who introduces himself as Sasha or Shurik is in fact Alexander, and the girl, Lida, is Lydia. There are rare exceptions when there is no common diminutive form for the full name, like Oleg, Kirill, Alisa, Nina. But then the crazy Russian world building comes to play, and out come Olezhik, Kiryusha, Alisushka, Ninushka. Okay, you would say, I got it. I can kind of see how Ekaterina turns into Katya and Lydia into Lida, but how is Alexander Shurik? They share just 2 letters. To tell you the truth, I didn't know myself. I had to look it up, so thanks to you, now I know. And according to the internet, that's exactly what happened to poor Alexander. Crazy Russian word building. The time and the overpowering Russian desire to endear worked its course, and at first, Alexander became Alexasha, which felt like a mouthful, and they threw the Alex away, and Sasha, stage 1, was a cheat. But to some people, that was not endearing enough, and they utilized the secret weapon, an archaic suffix ura, and Sasha became Sashura, which felt like a mouthful, and they threw the last remnants of the original name away, and Shura, or with an extra pinch of endearment, Shurik, came to be the diminutive that consists entirely of suffixes. So now you know. Meanwhile, Alexander is seeing the girl home with the charming mode full on. By the way, the scene is shot in November, so the actors are trying hard not to shiver and the grass to look green. The second encounter with the dog is less fortunate, and I really hope that it were only Shurik's pants that suffered and none of the animals involved. This mishap forces Lida to invite Shurik to come up to the flat that she shares with her parents so she can mend his pants. Otherwise, she would have never, since it would have been extremely improper. This links to another hilarious episode, which, as far as I can see, was lost in translation. Upon the pair's first visit to Lida's flat, When still in their zombie-like trance, Lida collected the key from a neighbor, who, seeing her with a guy, looks at her pointedly and asks, don't you have an exam today? Lida replies that she still has 3 hours to study with her girlfriend, leaving the poor lady utterly confused. Yet she resigns to the rules of this weird roleplay, for when she's revisited by the now conscious pair, she refers to Shurik. And what grade did the girlfriend get? If in the previous novella we saw how the famous Khrushchevki were built, here we can see the typical flat's interior. On one hand, the airy futuristic design was a characteristic style of the early space era everywhere, not just in the Soviet Union. But some of the features, like light, transparent partitions, and transforming multipurpose furniture, were essential to cramped quarters. Shurik attempts to further impress Lida by sewing the tear himself and reciting a poem about her namesake.
Хорошая девочка Лида. В отчаянии он написал.
His choice of declamation material might seem unimportant, unless you know that Gaidai performed this exact poem for his entrance exam to the film school. Meanwhile, Shurik begins to recognize small details, sounds and smells in the apartment that he allegedly never visited before, and panics. Lida suggests that this might be his psychic abilities manifesting and compares him to Wolf Messing, a legendary Soviet mentalist who was shrouded in legends and mysticism. They decide to test Shurik's ability of precognition. He fails it, but no one cares at this point. The story ends with our heroes agreeing to meet the day after tomorrow, after the next exam. But it was not the original ending. Initially, Gaidai planned for the heroes to bump into each other next day, again engrossed in studying and not recognize each other. But they later decided on a more romantic and less ambiguous ending. But which one would you prefer? And here is the second story, the déjà vu. Done! Of the 3, it was the least controversial and most favored by critics. It even won a prize at the film festival in Krakow, which is doubly peculiar since the story's idea was lifted from a Polish satirical magazine. The image of a boy and girl walking while immersed in a book became a symbol of students, and sculptures of them sprouted all across Russia, often in places that have no connection to the shooting whatsoever. As usual, the link to all 3 official versions, with or without subtitles in English or Russian, would be in the description. There is one more novella left, Operation Y, which gave its name to the entire collection. But before we get to it, I decided to make an introductory spotlight short first, because it would provide for a nice segue, and also because it is summer and I don't want to work. This short, followed by the full Soviet Movies Explained video, would come out in the first days of the next 2 months. And you know what to do in order not to miss them. Subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't already. Meanwhile, enjoy your summer, and I'll see you then.
Вы не скажете, сколько сейчас градусов ниже нуля?
Чего-чего?
А еще ведь как на грех тесто я поставила.
Я и с Ленкой посижу и за тестом погляжу. Отправляйтесь на дежу.
Ну, тогда я ухожу.